excited about. I'm very excited about today's conversation. I want to first start out by saying thank you so much to our panelists and, of course, the Justice Connection for being our spotlighted on the spotlight today. All right. Now, the virtual conversations are all about collaboratively bridging the racial wealth gap. And we are so happy that we're able to just come together as a community because, as we know, we are better together. And so, all of our conversations that we're having through, of course, the next one is going to be in March, April, and May, are all about how we can come together as a community to bridge that racial wealth gap. A little bit about the Association of Black Estate Planning Professionals. It's a nonprofit organization, and the goal of it is to strive to be the voice of fiduciary professionals using tools of estate planning to create and transfer wealth within the Black community. The goal of our organization is to have a multi-generational impact while transforming and educating the Black community. Focusing on the benefits of estate planning. Our president and founder, Amy Griffin, has seen organizations begin and help the community, and the goal is to continue to create that multi-generational wealth. The goal for us is to educate, advocate, connect, and then lead. Our mission, again, creating, conserving, and channeling wealth. And the goal for us is our vision is to increase the individual and collective capacity and competencies of professionals through this education. And we want to make sure that it's accessible to all of us. And so that's part of the reason we have these monthly virtual conversations, because we realize that we might not all be able to be in the same location, but we are able to collaborate and bring cross-discipline folks together so we can build on our synergy and break the bonds of institutional racism that unfortunately have plagued us. All right. So we have collaborative partners, and we have many different collaborative partners, and they represent all of the types of professionals that we aim to support and attract with our organization. And we're excited today because we have Keisha Brown from the Justice Connection, and she will share a little bit about what they do, as well as how you can learn more about the Justice Connection. Keisha?
Cool. Thank you so much for that intro, Carmia. Thank you, Amy, and the entire Association of Black Estate Planning Professionals for the opportunity to be here this afternoon with you. My name is Keisha Brown, and I'm the founder and CEO of Justice Connection. We are committed and firmly believe, right, that Black attorneys are the natural defenders, advocates, representatives, and fighters for Black people. And that, of course, includes Black wealth. Right. And so much of what we're talking about today is essential to our mission and the work that we do. And so for many of you, this may be the first time you're hearing about Justice Connection. It will not be the last. I hope that we can partner and connect and collaborate, because I believe wholeheartedly, like Amy does, we are stronger together. And Black lawyers do it all. Right? And Black lawyers, whether it's estate planning, as you already know, or whether it's business law, whether it's car accident, criminal, civil rights, family law, elder law, it is essential that we as Black people tap into the wealth of knowledge that Black lawyers can deliver to us, right? And anecdotally, you know, Black people, and we are in a state of, no matter what our personal net worth income is, we have less access to legal resources than our white counterparts. Right? And how does that then determine how we show up in the world, how we navigate all the things that are inevitably going to come from lifing? And so we are committed to protecting our neck, to making sure that we got your back, and your front and your sides too, in all of those different endeavors. And our attorneys are located, are barred around the country. We're primarily physically mostly in the DMV, but we're expanding first to Atlanta, as well as Chicago Metro and South Florida. But we're currently our attorneys are barred in DC, Maryland, Virginia, Georgia, Florida, California, Alabama, Illinois, New York, and I'm missing one, and Pennsylvania. So, I invite you to connect with us. I'm going to put in the chat our website. We recently launched the first Black lawyer directory. And so it's an opportunity to just easily sort of tap in, have that bad boy on your desktop, your laptop, on your phone. You're always welcome to come to the website itself and search for a Black lawyer. And any way that I can be a resource to the work that you're doing, for your family, for your business, for your community, please let me know. I put our information, so it's Justice Connection. That's justice, like just is, what is just, justiceconnection.com, and then / the Black Lawyers Directory. That's one way to get directly to the directory. And then we'll also be able to include you on our monthly mailing list. And then you can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Justice Connection. And if you want to reach me directly, I'm open, and I'm at info@justiceconnection.com. So once again, I really appreciate the Association of Black Estate Planning Professionals for affording this opportunity. And I welcome this dynamic conversation between our panelists and look forward to being a part of the solution with all of you. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Keisha. That is great. All right, so we are going to continue on, and we are going to get right into the introduction of our panelists. So we're very excited about this. We're going to allow our panelists to introduce themselves and give us a little bit of their background. And we're going to start with Professor Omar.
All right, thank you. Again, I'm also happy and honored to be here. My name is Hanif. I am Hanif Omar, and I'm a professor in the School of Business and Professional Studies at Shaw University. I teach entrepreneurship. Obviously, I'm also an entrepreneur myself. That is really primarily what I do most often. And I went to North Carolina Central University, and I have a degree in accounting and history. So was able to put the two together later on in life, this is maybe later on in life for me, and I'm able to teach my mistakes to our students at the university, and I enjoy it. And I am a practitioner myself. And so again, definitely appreciate the opportunity to be on this panel and discuss with you guys. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. We're excited for all the work that we're going to learn about. Next, we would like for Marcia Dukes to introduce herself.
Thank you so much. And I'm excited to be here as well. Again, my name is Marcia Dukes, and I work at Mass Mutual as a DEI practitioner. And one of my major focus is really on closing the wealth gap and building wealth transformation for the next generation. And so I'm proud to do this work and really excited to be here again. Thank you so much.
Carmia, you're muted.
Thank you. Ms. Lakeisha French, thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here in community with you all. I'm Lakeisha French. I'm the founder of The Future in Color. We are an institute that operates as a think to action tank, and our focus is on shaping the future economy, financial and capital markets of 2053. And so we want to be able to work our way backwards in doing so, and closing the wealth gap through a data-centered approach. And so we're going to be creating a global Black GDP that is going to be the first rollout of our institute. And so I look forward to working with you all and just, sharing insights in any way I can to support in the work that we're all collectively doing. And I've been an ecosystem builder of innovation and entrepreneurship, tech ecosystems for the past 18 years, building pathways for historically excluded communities, but in particular, the Black diaspora.
Wow. Love that. Thank you. Dr. LaTanya White, please introduce yourself.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. LaTanya White. I'm the principal and founder of Concept Creative Group. Our work is providing evidence-based and research frameworks on global competitiveness and advancing equity, and specifically in entrepreneurship ecosystems. My research expertise really looks at the lived experience of Black entrepreneurs and how that impacts the way that we generate and transfer wealth to the extent that we know how. A part of the work that I do is in helping close the knowledge gap around wealth transfer strategies, especially through the lived experience, the ancestral narrative of first generation Black wealth creators, and how we use some other frameworks that do not always honor our lived experiences to really build what are called dynasties. And so a family reaches dynastic wealth once they have controlled either the wealth or the business for 3 consecutive generations. And as we all know, and what Professor Omar will be kind of sharing with us, were some of those barriers that have been in place and have impeded our progress in wealth transfer. So I am excited. I think I'm going to take it from here, Carmia.
All right. Okay.
We're working behind the scenes, right? So I sit in a unique position, having been an entrepreneurship professor at a historically Black college in the Southeast for 11 years prior to transitioning out of the classroom and really focus on the research practitioner side. So not as much scholar or being in the classroom, but research practitioner. And Professor Omar and I have worked together on different presentations, really converging our research and our areas of expertise. So in his introduction, he did stick to the instructions, so he kept it short. But at this point, what I would love, Professor Omar, is to be able to introduce the audience to the breadth, right, of the work that you do in studying this history of Black entrepreneurship and this history of Black wealth. We've talked about this. We know that you're one of 3, at least we've only been able to find 3 other professors in the US that teach a course on the history of Black entrepreneurship. Is that right? Did we get that right?
Yes, that is correct to my knowledge. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so tell us a little bit about some of, how you were able to bring your accounting degree and your history degree, and certainly your drive and passion for entrepreneurship. How have you been able to bring those together, and how you do that in the classroom with Gen Z students, because they are a whole different batch?
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So, I mean, again, like I said, I was a practitioner myself, and my oldest and most successful company is 21 years as of September of this year. And then I have a lot of other companies that didn't do that well. But so I have a lot of experience just hands-on in entrepreneurship, the ups and downs of it. And also I have, when I was in school, the history degree was for me and the accounting degree was for my mom. And so somehow I was able to talk with the dean at the School of Business at Shaw University, and we arrived at this is an important subject matter, and also a piece that has been left out. So it's an entrepreneurship course, but it is more goes into the history of entrepreneurship, and not looking at history just in and from a museum's point of view, but how can our students and how can we use these historical um, achievements, historical failures, landmarks, what have you, to help us going forward in entrepreneurship. And so I say all that to say that we have a rich history of entrepreneurship in this country. When we came here, whether it be Africans or if we were here before Columbus, the folks that were enslaved or became enslaved were successful business people unto themselves before the Europeans arrived. And so that's the one thing I want to establish first, that it's a big thing now for us to be into entrepreneurship as a people. And I see myself personally as entrepreneurship is the key to liberation for people of color, particularly in this country, specifically African Americans. I think entrepreneurship is very key to that. But above and beyond that, we have entrepreneurs that even during enslavement times, folks that worked themselves out of enslavement prior to 1865. We have folks, beautiful examples of guys working themselves out of enslavement by, 20 years of being an entrepreneur. So I try to teach all of us, and particularly my students, that the reason why we have a wealth gap, or the reason why African American businesses may suffer compared to other groups in this country, is not because of know-how. It's not because we don't know how to do it. It's not because we don't have the talent to do it, the skill or the aptitude. There have been systematic things that have happened throughout our history that have kind of curtailed our wealth, or curtailed us from being at the same level of some of these other groups. Ultimately, as you know, and you teach as well, there's a lot of business trauma that we have just in general. Um, a little aside, some of us may be watching some of this court case on CNN around the prosecutor, the young lady in Atlanta. And there's all talk about keeping your money under your bed, or for African Americans, that's a practice to keep a lot of money or cash on us. But why do we keep cash on us? We keep cash on us traditionally because the Freedmen's Bank in 1865, from 1865 to 1874, was established by the U.S. government. It was ran by European Americans, and over a span of 9 years, we have over 70,000 African American entrepreneurs who deposited their funds into this bank. And in terms of today's money, $1.3 billion were stolen right from under them. And no one was prosecuted. No one has ever been prosecuted, not been talked about. But from that point on, that type of trauma, African Americans began to keep their money at home, and we didn't trust the banks and things of that nature. And so then that continues this process of where we have a phobia around banks, or we have a lack of knowledge of how to deal with banks and banking as a result of that type of historic trauma that maybe our great-great-grandmothers or grandfathers experienced. So all of these things, why there's a wealth gap, is really layered. And I try to teach these things in my course. And so the good part of it is that there are a lot of success stories, and we have the aptitude, we have the skill, and how do we take these lessons now to apply it going into even a different industrial revolution, so to speak. We're going into a fourth industrial revolution now. And so how do we take these skills and knowledge of the past and make it applicable to today? And that's really my goal personally, and that's what I try to do in bringing this message to different folks and adding it to a lot of the great expertise of the people here.
Very cool. And thank you for that. And I know that this is something that you can speak literally for weeks about as you facilitate the learning, in the classroom. So I appreciate you being able to, create space for some of our other colleagues here on the panel. Before I let you go though and transition to Marcia, talk a little bit about the work that you do with CDFIs, Community Development Finance Organizations, and then how do you find a way to bring your advocacy for Black entrepreneurship into that work?
Well, you have a consulting company, the Omar Group, and what we do is we underwrite for different CDFIs or banking institutions. So underwriting is that we'll analyze loan applications, loan data in order to see if applicants are bankable. And so specifically the CDFIs that I've worked with currently and in the past, they aim to serve the quote unquote, what is called the minority community, whether it be people of color, women-owned businesses, what have you. And so the other part of that is from a CDFI, and for those who are not understanding what a CDFI is, it is a nonprofit bank. So it's the same acronym as the FDIC banks, but it's or CDFI. And so these are nonprofit banks. Usually they have missions. Some of them have banking relationships. Some CDFIs are strictly for lending funds. Some are just for depository. They don't necessarily lend funds. But the CDFIs that I've worked with are primarily have a commercial wing where they do small business lending. And so I help underwrite some of those loans. And the other part of it is because of this history I talked about traditionally, there's not just in general American history, we're not taught how to use money, and we're not taught how to really bank properly or to bank as shrewd or be as smart as Donald Trump and how to use the banking system and IRS and all that type of stuff. And he probably does all those things legally, but we're not taught those things in school, not only African Americans, but just the average American in general. So we all need some level of teaching and how to be bankable. And so part of some of the things that we do is teach small business owners how to be bankable. What are some things that you need to demonstrate when you present application to a bank? Because commercial lending is totally different from personal lending. And so that's that's really primarily some of the work I do, and is technical assistance and really trying to bring us up to snuff or get us to the level so that we can scale as businesses. We possess some of the same core competencies of great business owners, but we most time undercapitalized because we don't understand how to get to finances and how to use these finances to scale our businesses and to move us higher. And so that's my goal. And so I really believe one of the ways we'll close the wealth gap is one person, one entrepreneur at a time. It does not necessarily happen all at once, but I can be part of the wave to move in that positive direction. And the last thing I would just say in adding for our businesses and closing the wealth gap, particularly for what we would call Black businesses or African American businesses, is that we should strive to make products and services that not only serve African American people in this country. We should strive to just have quality products that anyone can use, quality services that all folks can use, because what history shows us, some of the most successful and wealthiest African-American entrepreneurs, whether you look at Reginald Lewis or Robert F. Smith, their products and services did not only go to African-American people, they went to all people. These are services and things that all people can use, and it's just about the quality. So if we know that we have the same aptitude, the same skill level, we should also focus on just having a quality product that's not just necessarily geared to African Americans. We should just come out and be ready to compete globally as well. And that's how we will scale and really close the wealth gap.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. And you teed it up so nicely for Marcia. So I'm excited to hear. I'm excited, Marcia, for you to share a little bit more about the work that you love to do at Mass Mutual. And I know in your introduction, you were, or rather in Professor Omar, some of his commentary, just talking about the trauma around the Black experience and how that impacts, how we engage with money, how we think about insurance and financial services products. Tell us a little bit about some of the programming, some of the work that you're doing to help change that narrative in our communities.
Exactly. So thank you for the question, and thank you for pointing out about the CDFIs. I can share more about that too, some work that we've done at Mass Mutual. But I would share that a lot of the work that I'm doing is because of that trauma from the Freeman Bank industry, right? Like at that time point, really starts with the lack of trust in our community. It is work that has to be done over and over and over again. When you look at where Blacks do have life insurance products per se, right? We probably, I think, according to a LIMRA, we about 56% have insurance, but we may not have the right amount of insurance. I know personally in my family, I can tell you that insurance is a taboo subject. We never wanted to talk about insurance. It was a death product. I don't want to talk about it. I'm actually going through it with family members right now where it's retraining that mindset. And, you know, I have been in the financial insurance industry for over 20 years. My brother, the same. And we still have these conversations today in our household that there is a lack of understanding of why you need to protect or insurance, you know, your family. Why do you need to protect these things that you do establish? I will share, you know, I just had this conversation with my mom just last week because I'm having some family issues with my dad right now. And one of the things that she said, she goes, you know, I don't have a lot. I really don't need to have this conversation with you. And the conversation was about planning. We've been trying to tell her you need to plan. And, you know, it's interesting because there's these myths that we just can't get through. You know, a lot of people will say, hey, I can't afford to talk to someone. I can't afford to talk to a financial professional. Well, that's not true. We're in the business of educating. We're in the business of teaching, of helping people to understand at the simplest level, not difficult. And so we spend a lot of our time just explaining, you know, simple concepts. I'll share one that I've learned personally around having insurance through your employer versus having insurance on your own, right? And so I have family members like, I don't need insurance on my own because I have it through my employer. But the question is, if you leave your employer, then what happens, right? And so I was lucky that in my profession, it was a group of us. We all worked together. We were young at the time. And one person said, hey, I think we should go talk to the financial professional over here to find out about getting our own policy. And so we all did it as a group. I didn't know, like, I was not taught that in the home because, again, it was a death. Nobody talked about it. But a group of young kids in the financial service industry said, let's go talk to a financial professional. There's so many things that I did not know. You know, I personally had gotten insurance, right? But it was not insurance where it was a term policy. It was an insurance that could actually protect or build cash value in it. And so I didn't know that at the time. So I spent many years with maybe the wrong product. So I think what this really is about how do we have these meaningful conversations and discussions to say that this is not about a death policy. It is really about protecting your family, helping to create generational wealth. And also the other thing is some study from Limber that states 56% of people after a spouse may die do not have 6 months of coverage to help protect their regular bills, right? Just your mortgage and all of those things. And so I think it's, again, the mindset and how do we stop people from thinking that it's a taboo? And how do we start making people think that it's okay? And we, again, this whole conversation was together, right? Being together, you go further, it's better. How do we start changing this in our community? How do we have these dialogues? And I think that's the most important. So I mean, you know, as much as we can, we're out here trying to explain. That's a lot of the work that we're doing is debunking the myths. And really getting people to understand that it should not be, you know, yes, trust is an issue, but how do you find that you can build that trust, build the relationship with a person that is looking out for you and your family's best interests? I think one of my concerns right now is the $1 trillion that's going to be moved over to the next generation, right? How do we start thinking about, and I have a Gen Zer, right? And they are different. They are completely different. I have multiple Gen Zers in my home. they're not like we were. I mean, they have access to so much. My daughter's constantly telling me different things. I didn't talk about finances at her age, but this younger generation does talk about finances much more. They talk about how much they make. They share information on how much they make. I think those are the things that I do look forward to, of how we start having those conversations with the younger generation, but how are we actually teaching them to do the right things, because they can't find all their information that's right on social media, which they sometimes use as a guideline. And so that's why it's more important for us to do the work we're doing. One of the things that we are starting to do is looking at how do we get more Black advisors. So like, while this is, Black lawyers and Black estate attorneys, how do we have more Black advisors, and how can we, create that holistic model where, you have everybody together, a Black advisor, a Black attorney, to helping to solve some of those problems with the trust, because we know most times people want to see someone that looks like them to build that trust even further. So the work, it's ever, changing, because there's so many different things that we always have to deal with, but trust is the number one concern, the number one issue that we're really trying to build the relationships for that. And then when it comes to the CDFI, we did embark upon that a documentary recently called the Barber of Little Rock. And I would encourage anybody to go out and look at it. It's 30 minutes or so. And it's about a person named Arlo Washington that actually is looking to do this in his community and has started doing it. And it started out with him trying to teach others to be an entrepreneur and be a barber. So, we're trying to do this work in the best way, and really looking to make a difference in our community.
That's amazing. I did see the post on the documentary. I hadn't had a chance to take a look at it yet. It looks really intriguing. And so that actually, is a great segue into this next question around community wealth. So in what you were just sharing about the conversations that we have within our families, and those really insular conversations about trust, certainly at scale, right? From a community perspective, that's even harder, especially when we account for this idea that we've been socialized to mistrust each other, socialized around this scarcity mindset that if you have it, then certainly there's not enough to go around for me. So when we talk about really closing this wealth gap, and we understand that some of that data and those statistics are looking at household wealth, right? It's not individual wealth the way that we're used to seeing, the Forbes list and all of those things. We're talking about household wealth and family wealth. But what are some tools, what are some ways, especially leveraging our Gen Zers and taking those great things, that how they have access to information? What are some ways that we might be thinking about building community wealth? How are we able to uplift our communities as a whole, as we're working to build that trust within families and households? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say, again, it's really around this whole thing of education, each one teach one. And so one of the things that, again, how we're looking at the work is, how do we build these discussions and dialogues within groups? I'm a part of a group, a mother's organization. How do we come together as a group of women and say, here's where we want to make a difference, and here are some of the things that we should be teaching our children. Here are some of the things that we should be doing collectively as a community. One of the things that we've been doing is a relationship with the American College, and they really have a center that's developed around creating equity. And one of the things they said is, like, specifically around Black women. Black women are the CFOs of the community, of the household. They are the ones that are driving. And so how do we start leveraging that power of Black women who really take care of the communities to really start empowering them to help, from all different angles, from, teaching, making sure they're encouraging, how to have these conversations, that you should not be afraid to have the conversations, to understand. And I think that's where the power really lies right now. I think sometimes I mean, I know myself, I volunteer a lot, right? I give a lot of hours back to my community. And I give my hours back in this setting of teaching more about like my personal experience from a financial perspective and how I can help others. My brother does the same thing, where he's teaching, right? And locally in the community, how do we start building in our communities? In my town, we have, well, it's actually in my state, we have something called financial literacy, where every student has to have financial literacy in order to graduate. Like, it's not just the algebra, it's not just the calculus, they have to have the financial literacy class. And so it's a law here. And so how are we building those laws across that we're making sure that, again, we're teaching the right tools, and investing in our future. So it's all community based.
It is, and it's so amazing. So we're going to transition to Lakeisha, because that last note that you mentioned about being community based, Lakeisha, this is really, I'm thinking of the salons, right? So share, share for those of us that aren't on the inside, right, of the Future in Color Institute. What is Future in Color? What's the premise behind it? And then let's talk some more about those salons and the community-based education around Black wealth and wealth creation in the near future.
Yes, absolutely. So this is a exciting conversation, and so I'm very just eager to work with all of you. The Future in Color started out as initially an initiative, and the idea was for it to be an alliance, and we wanted to bring folks together to start to create a backwards design, strategic, applied economic approach to ensuring that we do not reach zero negative wealth by 2053. And part of that was that we didn't want to focus on zero negative wealth, right? Comes from a system that is not designed with us in mind, that has never valued us as human beings fully, right? And so every program, every piece of data, everything, therefore, that comes out of it, we should, one of my mentors should say, question everything, right? And so we should be questioning that. So it's first started with that question of like, is that true, right? And if it is not true, how can we build a strategy and backwards design, a human-centered design approach to one, collecting the data that tells a different story, a story that comes from a center within our diaspora. And so that means us collecting the data, right? Gathering qualitative data, retelling the stories, right? With understanding the root causes of a lot of the disparities we have, but let's focus on abundance and the fact that we do have enough. And if we operate from that center of belief, then what could we build? What could the future look like for Black futures and economy? So that's the idea of the Future in Color. Is the future is color. When you look at the demographic shift that is happening, with the new majority by 2045 in the US, there'll be a new majority. 2045 will be the first president to reside over a majority community that is people of color. But understanding that the Black community is not the majority in that number, and that race is a social construct. So whiteness will absorb other ethnicities, right? And so again, with our community, keeping that in mind. But then 2050, you look at the largest concentration of young people will be on the continent of Africa. The future is Africa. 2053, 1 in every 4 people in the world will be of African descent. So the future is not only in color, the future is Black, it's the Black diaspora. And so with that in mind, again, how can we build a strategy that begins to collect data, but then to create real solutions on the ground that allows us to use applied economics to bring our community into a place where we could have economic parity in the future. And we get to decide and shape, not just participate as a future workforce or be retrained and reskilled for AI and technology, right? But to take the opportunity that is within technology advancement with this demographic shift and leverage those two things to really sort of push back on that zero negative wealth. I got to a point where I said, I don't even want to talk about zero negative wealth anymore. I don't want to say wealth gap. How do we know that that is true? Are we all accounted for? right? Are some of us intentionally and unintentionally left out of that? A lot of what we do and operate as a Black community, as you mentioned, keeping our money, under the mattress, and is like a Black market, right? You think of like, different, like in the cannabis industry, like they're trying to turn it, but a lot of the activity is within the Black market because of the issue of trust. So is that data real is one of the questions. But if it is not, then we have to have a strategy and we have to be building that out. So that's what the Future in Color movement and this institute is about, because we realized we needed to institutionalize this work. It was going to be a heavy lift that needed to have a collaborative approach. There are many other groups that are doing great work around the racial wealth gap. And so how can we harness all of that to build out an actual applied economic strategy to put on the ground? And so one of the things I've become really good at is having these, really macro level, right, strategies, big visions, and being able to funnel down and like what's step one and how do we bring that on the ground to the community where it makes sense to folks, right? And they can get engaged in their everyday lives and start to be a part of this strategy. And that's whether you're a celebrity or an everyday person that goes to work. And so that's what the Future in Color is about. Our first initiative that we're rolling out is the Global Black GDP. Right. And so if we are to create a measurement for economic health of the future, because we know the GDP won't be relevant, right, by 2050, if we do it right. But and we call that GDP X. And so if we're trying to solve for what that X is, we cannot do that without accounting for the excluded communities that are not accounted for currently. And so the Black diaspora, we were the GDP. Right, we were the asset class. So so collectively though, we have enough. And so what does it look like to calculate, to create a global Black GDP, right? To quantify both the historic and current contributions of our community across sectors and industries, and particularly those that will be creating and generating and transferring the most wealth over the next 20 years or so. And again, backwards designing our way to that. So if you look at the 20 countries that will lead in GDP by 2053, how can we ensure that we have a significant standing as a global Black GDP in that number? Because otherwise, we don't get to shape policies. We don't get to create, that doesn't happen. And so we want to land on numbers. How many Black, millionaires do we need? How many Black appraisers do we need in the real estate space? How many, all working towards that strategy of taking the global Black GDP and increasing it, expanding it, and accelerating it by 50% by 2053 across different sectors and industries and regions. And so the reason we got really regional and sector specific is so we can get granular, right? Because there's a lot of minutia underneath, every sector. The insurance industry, has its stuff, the banking industry, right? So these salons that Dr. White is talking about is the opportunity to get on the ground with the community as well as with the sector and industry leaders to really, one, take this data that we're going to be quantifying, to create this global Black GDP, but then to set that against like, what is a strategy? What are some of the projections for 2053 based on the trajectory we're on now? How do we shift that? What's necessary? What things can we put in place and do? And then being able to track and measure that. So we're not thinking about spending power when we talk about the Black GDP, right? They're always extracting from us and thinking about how we spend, but that doesn't yield us a return on investment. There's one conversation about the historical investments, right? And there's a lot happening around the reparations conversation, but we're talking about the production side of it. How can we make sure that as a community, when we look at clean energy, the fact that water is going to be a crisis, right? And so the people that are going to solve these sustainability issues of the future with technology are going to be those who hold the wealth of the future, the intellectual property, the patents, the trademarks. So we want to look at 4 pillars when we think about our community and getting engaged from a community level, pledging to increase and accelerate and expand the global Black GDP is innovation, advocacy, ownership, and investments. And so those are the ways in which we contribute to an economy. And so being able to say, here's what we have historically contributed, here's where we are, here's the projections, and then get into those value creation salons, right? To look at what are the solutions and strategies we put on the ground, and what does that mean to do that in your everyday life as an entrepreneur, as an innovator. So, that's the salons are going to be a key piece of this. The data again fuels all of this, and then the last piece is our fellowship. And so the fellowship is for innovators, entrepreneurs, and creators in these spaces, those very folks who will be the ones expanding and accelerating the global Black GDP. And to be able to stand in the gap and work with those folks who have built solutions, right, are working on solutions for future industries, emerging sectors and industries, and what is the ecosystem that they need, right, to be able to be successful, particularly high growth businesses that can get to the point of creating jobs. And that's where you get that ecosystem for generational wealth and transfer that we do not currently have as a Black diaspora and community. There are tons of resources on the continent, right? So how do we pull together, harness those assets, get African resources and companies partnering with Black and African American businesses here in the U.S. to make Detroit the next chocolate capital, right? And to partner with the continent. And so we need to sort of what we call it is economic futurism, right? And so we're looking forward to bringing that to life, to see it, to feel it, is to believe it, and then take the numbers and to make it real and applied economics. So we're very excited. We need a lot of support and help, and Dr. White has been instrumental in helping to develop out this strategy. And we're looking forward to hitting the ground running. And we won't solve all the issues, but we're certainly looking to put a dent into it. And so that's how the community comes together with this sort of large systems change work that we're going to be doing.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited, Lakeisha, and I'm glad that you were able to join the conversation and really introduce the work that you're doing and the team's work. So I know that you've been working on this for 3 years now. Is that right?
3.5 years.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So I'm happy that it's really coming to a head. And sometimes I share when I was working at in the university. So the dean that I worked under, she would always say, whenever the times got hard or we were complaining in faculty meetings, she would always say with the straightest face, "But you were made for such a time as this." And so, Lakeisha, I just want to say thank you for continuing to heed the call and being obedient to the work that you're doing. And of course, how that's going to impact not just, these dynasties that we're building, but the dynasties that are to come. So thank you for that. What I'm going to do now, just kind of keeping an eye on the time, is we have a question in the chat. There actually was a comment. So Brian George shared that generational wealth is relatively new to our community. And you're so right about that, Brian. And I think what I'm going to share in these next 2 or 3 minutes might take that to a different level. And so what I'm going to share is this framework that came out of my research on first generation Black wealth creators, and also in comparison to high net worth and ultra high net worth families. So to your question, Brian, where you're asking how much effort is being put into teaching our communities about the sophisticated tax strategies to preserve that wealth and pass it on. What I want to share with you is that these families are not just passing down money. And what I learned in my study of the Rockefeller family, the Walton family, the Vanderbilts, and even dynastic families from different countries, is that they're passing down. When we think about generational wealth, we're typically only talking about financial assets that are being passed down in one direction, or being transferred. Let me say it that way, being transferred in one direction. Our high net worth and ultra high net worth counterparts are passing down 5 different forms of wealth. Let me say this, they're transferring 5 different forms of wealth. They're transferring that wealth to at least 3 consecutive generations through their trust vehicles. And they're also transferring that wealth in 4 directions. So I will be transferring wealth down to my daughter. I could also transfer wealth laterally to my sister and to my cousins. But I think for me, and this may be true for a lot of people who have a collectivistic identity, right? Where I actually, as I'm building a dynasty, or as we learn more about what dynastic wealth and what dynastic wealth is and how we create it in our families and in our communities, we get to transfer wealth up. So to our parents and aunts and uncles, and in my case, my grandmother who's 91 years old is still with us. I get to transfer wealth up to her. And so the idea really is that it's not just about the monetary wealth, especially in communities of color, in our families. There's this rich history. There's this rich, deep wellspring of wealth that comes from our family history, right? It's like literally baked into our family recipes. But again, we aren't always privy to the idea that the lived experience of a person, their passion, their skills, and their abilities, the things that they're able to do and transform, that is wealth as well. The challenge that we face in our communities is we haven't captured that, right? Like how many, the USDA actually issued a report in 2018 talking about heirs property, and that's the loss of wealth through the loss of land. Over $1 billion in Black wealth has been lost in the Southeast alone. 8 states alone had lost over $1 billion in Black wealth due to land loss. And so when we're talking about generational wealth, when we're talking about that compared to dynastic wealth, we're looking at the whole experience, right? We're not just talking about your W-2 income or your real estate portfolio or your profit and loss statement from your business. We're talking about what is your family identity. We're talking about how do you help translate your family identity and how you serve your community through leadership and philanthropy. So there is this connection. I hadn't researched it. I don't know how empirical it is, but there is a direct correlation between philanthropy and wealth. And that again is something that in our communities and in our families, we have not been exposed to on a deep enough level to create these kinds of systemic and community-based changes. So I'm going to turn it over to Carmia. That was just a real, little teaser. But I'm looking at the time, and out of respect for everybody's time, because I know we can all talk about this until literally until 2053. So I'm going to turn it back over to Carmia to tie us up.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation that we've had today. Before we wrap up, I do want to just check in with our participants, our panelists first. Is there anything? I know we've talked about so much information. I am guilty of sending private messages to our moderator, LaTanya, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is so exciting. This is so great. And so I just wanted to say thank you so much for sharing your gifts, your wisdom with us, because it has been amazing. Thank you so much. Let's see. Oh, perfect. Oh, and Marcia, thank you so much for talking and sharing about the documentary. We'll make sure when we share the link for the attendees and those who've registered to include both the information from the Justice Connection that Keisha shared with us, as well as the documentary. And of course, also the slides will be included as well. Is there any other information that you would like to leave us with this afternoon? Our amazing panelists, the floor is yours.
I can share. So the Future in Color here, if you're in Atlanta, April 25th, we'll be hosting a reception during the African American Mayors Association Conference here in Atlanta. So it's this is our launch year. So welcome you guys to come out. And then if you have an interest, we'll be having a private dinner in DC on March 27th, if you're in the DC area, being hosted by Halcyon with some private funders, thought leaders, advocacy folks, and leadership from across different industries and sectors. So feel free to reach out to me if that's of interest, but the masses are welcome to join us during the reception in Atlanta.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
I'd like to just share really quickly. So it's hard, right, to talk to your family about money and death And those two things are inherent to the wealth transfer process. One of the things that I do is help to facilitate those conversations with Black founders and their families. And one way to get the conversation started is to complete a wealth personality quiz. So you can just connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll send you over the link to that quiz, share it out to your family, and just give them grace. That is all I can say from my own experience in working with my family, is give them grace. So thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Again, my name is Carmia Lewis, and I just thank you so much for all that you've done, being here today and taking the time. I see that we have our founder and president here, and so I wanted to just see if Amy Griffin would like to share anything as we close today.
So this was great. I don't know. I didn't know what to expect, but I am always impressed with the great brilliance that we have in our community. And so I know that there is so much that we need to get out. That's the reality, is we have such information that while we have it, I mean, there is so much. I was taking notes feverishly about how I want to make sure we gets out to our community. It will be celebrated on our YouTube channel for members of the association. But what I do is look forward to making sure that we tap into the resources that we found and build on the information so that we know, again, we're better together. Right? And so I thank Justice Connection as well for being an opportunity for Black lawyers to get spotlighted as well, so that we know that, I think as someone was mentioning earlier, that the cultural competence of that we have for one another, which is the whole reason why the Association of Black Estate Planning Professionals was created, because we want to build that network of folks who are culturally competent and care and have the values about multi-generational wealth building. So I thank you all for giving us your time, and I look forward to watching and being a part of the growth of the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much, and we look forward to all connecting with you and maintaining this relationship in the future, and please let us know how we can also support you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.